Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. So, a little bit different of a conversation and scene that we're going to have tonight. Many of you might have caught some of our social media posts, but we are going to be talking about miscarriages tonight. So, we really want you to comment, tune in, send messages, kind of tell your story. We're going to go over a little bit of our story, but most important, we're going to talk about what people are not talking about and why this is such a quiet subject and everybody's afraid to kind of discuss it a little bit. I'm going to start with just the word. I hated the word miscarry because when I went through mine, I can tell you, I didn't miscarry. I literally held on with every fiber of my body and wanted so bad for that to happen. So just to start, I hate that word, which leads right into I'm the bad person. I'm the one wrong. It's my fault. And we're going to talk about why women feel that way and why we felt that way and kind of what that has developed and how that can affect you long term. I know that, when I went through it to start with, we kind of joked about this, but you often ask those questions. Was it that ham sandwich you ate? Was it that yoga session you went to?
You lift a box funny.
Yeah, you lifted a box funny. You first are going to blame yourself. So we're going to kind of talk through those struggles that we went through and feel free to kind of share with us what you felt, maybe what people said, how it affected you and that. So
things you wish people would have said to you.
Yes, we're going to cover that as well. So first, I'd like to introduce who we have with us. Just say who you are. We're going to talk our stories, but kind of just tell me who you have at home, if you have any other children, who you are, and just a little bit about you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Danielle. And just to piggyback, I definitely agree that the term miscarriage is not really a great term and a great word, and just not something that people probably even want to say the word. But I'm Allison Lewis. Just to give you a little background on myself, and I am not a morning mom. I have two boys that are 7 and 5. And did you want me to just give a brief background to start?
Yeah, okay. Just a brief summary, and then we'll get into the details of the story.
Great. So I had a miscarriage back in September, and I had never had one before and knew some people that had had them, but never really talked about it. And I decided that because I didn't really have a lot of people talking about it around me, I did a blog post about it back in February, and I thought that was very helpful for me. And I just today finally recorded and published my podcast about having a miscarriage and just some of the stigma we have about talking about it. So I'll let Bethany introduce herself.
Bethany's returning. She's been on several shows. She's a show favorite.
Yeah.
Show favorite.
So I have 3 kids. Anya is 8.5, Gabe is 4, and Reese is 2.5 now. And actually it was my pregnancy with Reese where I had to have the conversation about I struggle with pregnancy. I have gestational diabetes every single time. With my pregnancy with him, I didn't even know I was pregnant until about 12 weeks in. I lost a significant amount of weight, almost ended up in the hospital. Had to have a conversation with a doctor about the possibility of having a DNC because nothing was going the way it should be going. And having to come to terms with that conversation. And then obviously I now have a child, but trying to make the decision, how do you sort through all of those things and come to terms with everything, and a lot of the emotions that went along with that.
Perfect. So, yeah. And we invited Bethany on the show because Bethany has really been both of our main support through our miscarriages, as well as just my general support for years. So she's going to contribute a lot to the conversation. So I love how you had said, you reiterated that you didn't realize how many people had this. And so when you start looking at statistics, 1 in 4 women have went through a miscarriage, whether they knew it, maybe they were young enough and didn't realize it or not, but 1 in 4. And I know that when I went through mine, I never thought that that could even be possible. At that period, like, you're flooded with so many emotions. You just want to why. There's all this blame. There's all this, like, guilt. And in my case, it wasn't just the miscarriage. I had, like, so much else going. And something else, like, that I wanted to bring up is, you know, when we talk about how, like, you know, was it the sandwich or the yoga lesson or the extra cup of coffee, or, you know, as women, we need to know why. We need to understand, and we need to have a fact. And I think that that is maybe the source of where the guilt and shame starts. But realistically, 70% of miscarriages are due to your body knowing that something's wrong. An embryo, a genetic, an issue, and that. The other, and I didn't write them all down, a birth control misdefect of the embryo wasn't formed right. Like, there's so many things. So, but you can't tell a woman that who just lost a child. They need a definite fact, and they're going to find one on their own terms. And so I think that it's important to know those facts, but at that time, nobody wants to hear them. Like, nobody wants to know about them.
And you can't control that. I think that
Yeah.
that's the hard part is you want to have a reason, even if it's something that you're blaming yourself for. Like,
Exactly.
I was
Like
running.
black and white.
I needed a set reason to be able to close that closure. So just a little of my story, and then we'll kind of go on our stories and go through. So I was married in 2014, and
That's how Gabe got here.
yeah, so funny story. Let's add this, because this is one of my favorite stories that ever exist. I was married in August 2014, and five out of the 6 women that were part of my wedding party all were pregnant. All got pregnant. So we get to celebrate this week. I like to say that my wedding, at least it brought a lot of love to a lot of other people. So all of my really close friends, 5 out of the 6 of them got pregnant within a day or 2 of my wedding. So we were doing something right there.
Yeah.
So I love that story. I did not. So I laugh. We have a lot of birthday parties in the same week. So love it. Love it. Bethany was one of them. Rita, who's been on
Rita's watching.
Rita's been on our show before. She was one of them. So we won't list them all, but it's something I love about my wedding date is that all these babies were created. So I got pregnant in August 2016. I miscarried on November 17th, 2016. So I was actually 21 weeks. I'm going to cry already. So 21 weeks is not considered actually a miscarriage. It's considered a stillbirth. So I had to go through the DNC process. I had to hold my child. Well, I didn't have to, but I wanted to. I chose to. I found out that it was a little boy. I named him. Like, I went through that whole process. So, gosh,
You're going to be okay.
I was trying so hard to not cry. I'm not a crier online. So, you know, through this experience, like, I had the grief of losing that child, but I also, and I want to talk about this because I think this is very real, and I think that a lot of women go through that, is I had 2 very healthy children from a previous relationship. But when I got married and I thought we bought a home together, I then got pregnant, it was like that fairy tale dream. Like, I will have the family I always supposed to have. Like, I will have the husband, the beautiful home, the baby. Like, so it wasn't even that I was grieving the child. I was grieving the idea of that dream ending. And so, you know, that was extremely difficult. And the DNC, I mean, just to kind of tell you, like, it's a major surgery. Like, I was in a hospital. My husband at the time was, no fault to him, but didn't know how to process this. Like, he tried, but he wasn't able to. So I walked a lot of these steps by myself because he did not know how to process them, which then started the distance between us. So when I did my DNC, it was, I'm a big girl and I can do this myself and I don't need you, which was so much a lie.
But you really needed perspective.
But in those times, like where you feel alone and you feel like it's your fault, I couldn't look him in the face and say this was our child we lost. I looked at him and said I did something wrong, because that's the emotion and where you're at that time. So when you get a DNC, it's a full surgery. Like, I walked out of that hospital, not to make this light, in those like uncomfortable high waist underwear.
Oh yeah, the granny panties.
And the granny panties and all of the unflattering things that come with having a baby.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have a baby in my hand.
Yeah.
And like that was like another hit of, I have to go through all this. Like, this isn't fair. I can't deal with this. I don't want to do that. And then it took my body 7 weeks to get back to normal. And I remember going to work like that. And then the medical bills came in because you still have to pay for all that.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a baby. And so I got angry and I got mean. And I can tell you that I took 90% of that out on my husband because I couldn't take it out on anyone else because I couldn't talk about it.
Right.
I couldn't tell everyone.
I knew bits and pieces.
Yeah, and there are certain friends that knew bits and pieces, but I felt ashamed to talk about it because I didn't want to process that. And the people I did talk about it were very like, they don't know what to say. And when they did talk, they didn't mean to, but I didn't want to hear what they had to say.
Or they might have made you feel bad. Like, I know we were talking about.
You have 2 healthy babies, or your next pregnancy will go fine. Well, my husband then told me there's no way he was going through this ever again. So then I had to go through the thing of, I will never have any more children. Like, this was my last chance. And that's how I viewed it.
Well, then you're grieving a whole different kind of loss at that time.
Exactly. And so, I want to talk too tonight of how that affects your marriage and how that affects your relationship. Many of you know my story. I recently went through a divorce, and I will tell you that hands down, I think that the start of it was our miscarriage. Like, neither of us healed from that properly, and neither of us were able to process it because we weren't talking about it. And like, that's kind of why we're doing this show as well.
Kind of like the elephant in the room.
Yeah, neither of us could talk about it.
Well, and I think your comment, Danielle, that you made about how, like, when he asked you if you wanted him to go to the hospital, like, sometimes I think it's hard for other people, unfortunately, to read between the lines. Like, you might be saying, no, I'm fine, but
reality is you really need somebody there. You just don't know how to say what you need, I think.
Yeah,
because you don't want, like, I get that you might have felt like you were just burdening him. Like, if he's asking you, then that must mean that he doesn't want to go. So
and that's exactly what I thought. And that is exactly what I thought. And so, and even like through our marriage, like I still actually to this day, many of my friends know this. In November, I go to the park and I release balloons still, and I do all that. I did that all alone. I couldn't even do that with my husband because I couldn't look at him and tell him that I hurt him. Like, I knew that baby hurt him even though he wouldn't admit it.
Yeah.
So, like, that is all that guilt and all that shame right there. Like, that's supposed to be your closest person, and I couldn't even give him that. And so, like,
the weight of the world.
Exactly. So that's kind of my story. So
yeah. Well, my story, I guess, is a little bit different than Danielle's, but similar in some ways. So I mentioned I have 2 boys that are 7 and 5. I had never had a miscarriage before, and again, I had heard of people having them, more of like whispered conversations, or like when I said I was pregnant with my second, someone had told me that they had had a miscarriage, and I think they just like wanted to tell me, but I like didn't.
That's kind of hard to process.
Yeah, and I didn't really.
Well, then when you are pregnant, I can't imagine. Like, I've had no children after my miscarriage, but I know how awkward it was when people were like, "Oh, just have another one," or "You have 2 healthy kids." If you have a healthy child, and then to be able to connect with somebody who then just says you have a miscarriage, like, I don't know how I would do that.
And it was one of those things, like, I felt bad for her, but I think I didn't really know what it was like until it was myself. And I think that sometimes it's hard, and I don't know, like, from your ex-husband's perspective, or even from my husband's perspective, it's hard when you're living with all of it, and someone else is trying to understand, but it's not always easy.
It's your body versus, like, they're just a bystander.
Exactly.
Kind of, I think, is the feeling in a way.
Yeah.
And for me, I was, this pregnancy I had was different than my first two because I had ran a marathon in 2011, and then shortly after, I hadn't ran
No
one
marathons for me, pregnant or not.
So I'm not trying to say like, ooh, look at me, because I haven't ran one since, and I really don't plan on doing another one. But
maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe someday.
No, maybe no someday. I can tell you that right now.
But my point in saying that was I was in great shape, but then I had my oldest son, and like I didn't run throughout my pregnancy, and like I didn't really work out, and really with my second I didn't. So when I found out I was pregnant this time, I had been getting up in the morning and running, and like I was eating well, and I thought, well, when I found out when I went to my first ultrasound, I was like 9 weeks. So this is how my story is a lot different than Danielle. I wasn't that far along. So at 9 weeks, I was told I was measuring at 5 weeks, and there was no heartbeat. They showed me this fetal pole, and like they were explaining it all to me, and I was just kind of sitting there like, what does this all mean? Like, but I was quickly processing that it wasn't going to turn out well. But for me, again, I had never experienced anything like that before. And again, other people telling me that they had miscarriages, like I felt for them, but it's a different experience when it's yourself. So for me, I had my second ultrasound like right after Labor Day, and
yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah, nothing had changed.
We talked a lot.
And what was nice was, and I'm gonna plug Mom's Club here.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Because
They're amazing.
it is.
Yeah.
It really is. And I was working on a newsletter with Bethany, and she was one of the first people I told, because I was like, I have to tell her because I want to.
I spent a lot of time with you too, so I would have probably figured it out eventually if you hadn't.
Yeah, and I felt like I was a little bit off, maybe a lot bit off, but it was a lot to process. And I think the whole like talking to other people about it at the time, I was just trying to process what that even meant.
Yeah.
And then
well, then you had to decide how you were going to handle it.
Yeah, and like with Danielle having the DNC, like I had heard of that. I had never heard of a medication-induced miscarriage, but I didn't know when I was going to have one on my own. So I decided I didn't want to have surgery.
Weren't you traveling, I think, too? You had some kind of travel coming up.
I was going to a family event out of town, but I just decided I was going to do the medication-induced miscarriage. And I know it's major surgery to have the DNC, but from my experience, I had to go in every week to have my HCG levels tested, which for all of you that aren't familiar with that term.
And that's a pain in the...
Yeah, you have to do that with the DNC too. So yeah, with the DNC, basically it's a major surgery, and you birth that child. Like you push that child out. Like it is labor, knowing that what's coming out is not what you want.
Yeah.
But then you do have to go in. I had to go get my hormones checked I think I had to go in every other week.
Okay.
I would say, I know for my process, obviously I ended up with a healthy child, but when everything was really bad, I do go in every 2 days for blood work.
Yeah.
Which that would have been awful. I mean, mine was once a week, and then there was 1 week where I said, can I just skip this? Because it was literally like...
And the hardest thing too...
Checks and balances, just to make sure it went down to 0.
Yep.
But I don't know, like...
And you're walking in. I will admit this, and this is one of my biggest regrets in life. I got so bitter when I would walk into those rooms. You walk into the OB to get your blood work done to make sure your hormones went down because you don't have your baby, and everyone's pregnant.
And you feel like you're this outlaw. Like,
yeah,
like,
everyone's pregnant, or they have their like infant carriers. And I am not a mean person. Like I usually am sunshine and rainbow, happy for everybody. I'm going to admit, there were times where I wanted to like go kick that person because I was so angry. Like, how come you get that healthy baby and I don't? Like, what did I do that I didn't get that? They don't like, I mean, I don't think that would be better to like sanction you to a room. You don't have to see that.
It'd be like going to the pediatrician and you sit on the sick side.
Like you're the left.
I remember being so angry every time I went in there. And then I'd come home and I couldn't tell my friends because I run 2 businesses that need me to be happy. I had 2 babies at home. At this time, my daughter was 8. No, hold on. Olivia would have been 9 and Carter would have been 5. Like, I couldn't melt down. They didn't understand what was wrong with mommy. So the only person I could yell at was my husband. Like, he got it all. Like, he got everything dumped on him because I had to fake everything was fine. And I remember all that blood work. And I remember all of that, of just getting those numbers. And they're, like, happy. Like, your numbers are returning back to normal. And I'm like, I want to punch you in the face now because I'm not normal.
Well, and it's good to hear your experience about the DNC because with my experience, I had anger.
I wanted to hit people for you.
I had anger more because my doctor had told me, well, you can do 2 different kinds of medication and it'll help with your medication-induced miscarriage. It'll make, like, less cramping, less issues. And
I don't know about your doctor, but my doctor was very like, here's what we do. Let's put you on a what do they call it? Not a treadmill, an assembly line. Like
this step and
this is what you need to do. Here are your steps. Like
my doctor, it was interesting because I wasn't going to an OBGYN here yet. So she was new. Like, I didn't really know her. She wasn't bad, but when she prescribed me the medications and I went to fill them and I couldn't get one of them filled.
Yeah, that was what made me angry.
Yeah.
I had a nurse call me, and I was really confused at first because she called me back. I was trying to fill the medication. The pharmacy wouldn't fill it. And I was like, okay, I don't know why they won't fill it. And then I was told by a nurse that called me, well, there must be a shortage. And again, I had a lot going on. So I wasn't like, red flags weren't going off that something was not right about that.
Yeah.
And then I ended up just taking one of the medications. And again, I didn't have a DNC, but a part of me said, maybe I should have, just because I just felt like I was bleeding a lot and I was just having cramps. I felt like I did after I had my 2 boys. Like,
you do. You feel
your
like
stomach is just like not.
Like, I got the 10 pounds, didn't go away. I had the bleeding. I had everything that you have when you have a baby, but I didn't have the baby.
Yeah. Like,
you go through all of that. And I don't know if you go through the same if you're not as far along as I was, but yeah, like you feel that every day. So it's a constant reminder, like you can't even, it's more shame. It's more like reminding, like when you try to go to work and you're wearing those like granny panties, and you don't want to tell all your coworkers because they're not going to understand.
Picture they have going around Facebook of the mom after having birth and like
I
legit like what real birth looks like.
Yeah.
Compared to the princess in heels.
So I mean, it's very real. And so something I really want to touch on is we had kind of talked a little bit about what people can say, and somebody had asked. It went back a little bit. Somebody had asked what friends can do, and I can tell you, like, I have amazing friends. Like, I will be the first to say I have amazing friends. But friends that have not gone through this, they don't know what to say. And people who have gone through it, they don't know what to say either, to a certain extent. Because anytime they try to say something, they're, like, going through their own thing. And so, you know.
But I just think knowing, like, again, I'll mention Mom's Club. Someone in Mom's Club, she was very vocal that she had some miscarriages. And, like, just the fact that she was talking about it was a good thing. And I think that is something that, like, you don't have to have the right thing to say, but being willing to at least, listening. I think it helps other people realize, like, oh, I'm not the only one, and, like
all the things you wish people talked about before you have to experience.
And that's what we're going to go into next, and I think it's important. But one of the biggest things, and I posted this today on my Facebook, and to be honest, the last few days have been very difficult for me preparing for this show because I don't think that I processed this loss fully until recently. But one thing I posted today was I didn't need someone to have the right words. All I needed them to say was, it's okay that you're feeling the way you are. No matter how I was feeling, I needed someone to just say, it's okay. Like, it's okay that you're sad today. It's okay that you're mad. It's okay that you can't go on social media and see all these happy, cute babies.
Or see another post like, oh, so-and-so is expecting, or
Yeah.
see a gender
So and
reveal.
so is gonna be a big brother,
Yeah.
or
And I had that because, like I had said, I had 5 of my closest friends celebrating their babies had just turned 1
And
when
that's
I had
hard.
lost
including
mine.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had just lost mine, and I'm thinking in my head, y'all got pregnant at my wedding,
Yeah.
but I don't have a baby. And so
Well,
I needed someone just to say, it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. And that's my best advice when I ask the question. I forget even who asked it on here. I think people should be given a list of what not to say. Yeah, I would agree. Do not tell me I have 2 healthy kids at home. That was one of my biggest things. My other big thing, and I said this before the show, is when I'm okay, I think now to a certain extent, but on Mother's Day or those ones, those are especially hard, when people say I'm a mom of 2. I held 3 babies. I delivered. Like, I had a DNC. I delivered 3 babies. I live with 2 babies, but I delivered 3. And so when people say that, I think Abby brought that up. When people say that, it still like stings because it's like, no, you're wrong. Like, I want to like beat them up right there wherever they are. No, I have 3 babies. Like, no matter what happened, I held 3 babies.
See,
And
and that's something that, like, I don't know what that experience is like. I didn't go through that. And so, therefore, I don't think that I have the right to feel
maybe,
that way.
yeah.
Only because I gained weight after I was pregnant. I didn't gain any weight while I was pregnant. And it was like, I felt nauseous and I had some of those symptoms, but, like, I didn't get that far.
Yeah.
Which you could say there's pros and cons of that, but, like, I don't know.
But it's still a loss. And I feel like any miscarriage at any level is a loss. And I feel that each woman, no matter what age you lose your child, no matter what week, no matter, anything, it's still a loss. And you're still going to think something is wrong with what you did. And I think that is something to acknowledge and bring to people's attention, that it doesn't matter. I don't think that I am any more of a mom than you are.
Well, yeah.
Because of my age of the child, but like that needs to be considered too, because I feel like people would ask that. People would constantly, well, how far were you? It doesn't matter how far I was for me to collect your sympathy.
No,
like,
and
kind
that,
of thing.
and that's
and
exactly
that was
right.
a big
like,
thing. Like, that was one of the first questions. How far were you? It does not matter.
And
So
you
our
should-
producer has something
Well,
to
I
say.
should have contributed. I wasn't going to tonight because of the topic, but I'm asking the question for Katie.
Thank you. There are so many
Yeah,
comments.
There's a lot of comments coming in, and one of the things that Katie brought up is, and I think you were going to touch on this anyway.
Yeah.
There's this pressure as a society to have babies.
Yeah.
So in other words, especially in the wedding industry that I'm a part of, right? It's where even in the toasts.
Do you get
like-
married when you have
You have babies.
Hey,
You have
all right,
babies. That's
let's
what you
go
do.
have babies, right? So one thing she brought up is that pressure of how do you deal with that, especially because she had a miscarriage, she said earlier in life, and now she's married, and now her husband and her got together with the idea that they might not be able to have children.
I have
Yeah.
a sibling whose wife chose to get sterilized, so they will never have kids. I mean, so there's also that aspect of it too.
Yeah, and there is. And I feel like, to touch on that, like, I have 2 very healthy babies. They were born before I was married with someone else. So when I got married, I had this idea of, I'm doing it all right now. Like, we have the big house. I explained this earlier.
Yeah,
Like,
the dream.
I'm supposed to have babies. And then when I couldn't have that child, and then, again, not putting him down by any means, but my ex-husband couldn't process getting pregnant again. He couldn't process the fact of maybe losing another. So he just took the stand of, I don't want kids. I don't want kids. I don't want to talk about it. I want nothing to do that. And to even tell people that and discuss that was then the reality of, like, now I sit here, I'm divorced, I'm 32, I probably will not have any more children. Did I lose that chance? That pressure of you get married, you have babies, like, that's what you do, was there. But now, like, what do I do now? Like,
Well, and the thing is,
Never
like,
know.
you're
I mean-
32, and I'm not I'm not going to say
You're
how old I am.
significantly younger than both of us.
All right, my
I'm not
cutoff
saying
is
I'm a grandmother yet, because I'm not. But like, in my eyes, how I look at that, and again, I'm sensitive to your story, but I look at it like you're 32 and you've got your whole life ahead of you. And if you want to get remarried and you want to have another kid, I know someone who just had a baby at 40.
I think that God's trying to tell me something, because everybody I know now is having babies at like 35 to 40. I have this plan only till I'm 33.
Well, I think your plan is garbage.
And
41. Our producer was 41. Not gonna happen, guys. Or she was not gonna happen, guys. Not.
Okay, so my last baby was not quite 35.
Yeah. So that is something too that I think that women deal with, is the pressure of you need to have more kids. You need to have more kids. I'm gonna be real, and I don't think I've ever admitted this out loud. I don't know if my fear is more having kids at an older age, or if my fear is, now that my marriage has ended, starting a life with someone else and having that disappointment that I can't have that dream again. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Which is kind of like putting the...
It is. It's
cart before the
completely
horse.
100% wrong. But I had such an amazing dream of get married, buy the house, remodel the house, have a baby. Now that ended, I don't know if, I truthfully don't know if I'm really scared to have a child older, or if it's to lose that dream again.
I think maybe it's creating a new dream.
Yeah.
or the whole control thing.
It is very much control. Probably.
Because
Danielle's middle name is Control, guys, just so you know.
She doesn't like not being in control.
when you're going,
I don't have control, and
Yeah.
I want what I want, and if I can't have it, then we aren't even trying.
and see, that's what's the hard part of life is, like, you'll never know why you had a miscarriage, and
Yeah.
it might be, it just happens, and that's hard to accept. But then I think when you're going down a path and then you're stopped, it's hard emotionally
Yeah.
to regroup yourself and say, you could do this again, and it's never going to be perfect. Like with my two boys, we moved to 4 different states.
I don't know how you did that.
My youngest
No.
son,
I moved next door. Remember, I only have lived on this street 4 times.
well, you know, and I could say that both of my boys, they don't remember being born in Minnesota, or my youngest isn't going to say, oh, well, I went to 7 different like preschool / daycares. He has no idea. And I think that a part of that is our children and the people around us don't expect us to be perfect. So if we're going to put all that pressure and stress on ourselves that like we need to be, we need to just get over things, or that we,
I agree.
it's not reality. And it's
Well,
not,
and I think that is the answer to all of this. And we know the answer. You may be sitting there knowing we don't have to be perfect. So why do we put this much pressure on ourselves? Why, if we know that 70% of miscarriages end because of a genetic in embryo, why can't we just accept that? Because that's not society.
and when you read those,
we have to have a reason.
Well, and when you read those statistics and you hear 1 in 4 women have miscarriage, well, that 1 in 4,
That's
that
not
one
me.
is someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be someone else. And I think that is something that is reality. And then also, something else that's on here, we have way off script, by the way, but that's okay. That's okay. There's my control going out the window, guys. See, I'm trying a little.
She's making progress, guys.
I have made huge progress. One thing that I want to say is like, there is no right reason to recover from a miscarriage. Each person's definition is very different. And like, personally, you know, I love hearing Allyson's story. You know, she says that I helped her do this podcast and I helped her do all this.
You did. I would
But-
have posted it today if it wasn't.
But in my head, I said to her earlier, you process this better. You told people. I don't think I processed
I don't
this.
know that
like,
it was better, just different.
it was different, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's no right or wrong way to process any grief in your life. There's no right or wrong way to process any loss or anything. You're gonna take it with that grain. I didn't, you know, I told a few people and didn't get the reaction, like, you know, in the heart, and so I worked. And I can tell you 2017 was the best year business-wise that I've ever had in my entire life. Am I proud of that? Yes. But the reason for that isn't authentic. The reason for that is I couldn't deal with the pain that I was going through. That was my escape. I couldn't deal with the fact of, Danielle, did you eat the tuna sandwich? Is that why you had a miscarriage? No, I had no control over losing that child. I had no control of how my husband processed that. I did very much have control of how I treated him because of processing it. But what I had control of was running a rock star business. Was that how I processed it? Yes. Was that wrong? Maybe. Now I look at that as maybe not the best, but at the time that's what I needed.
Well, and I think that at least, like, I know you were comparing yourself to me, so now I'm going to compare myself to you.
Great.
So you can say...
That's what us women do.
So you can say, oh, well, you know, you did a better job. And then I think, really? Because I didn't gain any weight when I was pregnant, and I really wasn't pregnant for that long. And then I gained weight afterwards. So,
girl,
if my way of dealing with it was...
I still ate for 9 months like I was pregnant just because I was mad.
Well, like for me, it'd be like, okay,
and there's me over here who can't eat crap.
Yeah, and she can't eat nothing. Bethany's pregnancy times are painful for all of us.
Yes.
Like, just so everyone knows.
Yeah. So it's like I looked at it like, oh, well, you're saying that, but I'm like, I would go get fast food and like cheeseburgers and stuff, and would like fill that void with food. And even though I knew I was doing it, I still like.
Sometimes you just need to do whatever you need to do to make it through that moment, and then like later on.
And then get mad at yourself and say, I gained this 15 pounds because of why? Because I was angry.
Yeah.
Couldn't I have done something else?
And that's what, you know, goes into that. Like, I wanted to really talk about like what do we need to hear? What can you tell somebody that is going through this? And the best thing is each person's process, each person's way they deal with it is going to be theirs. It's going to be theirs, and there's no right or wrong. There's no answer to that question. It's going to be what's in your life, and it's going to be how you deal with it. And I can tell you, I don't know if it's because of everything going on in my life, but I feel like now is when I'm actually dealing with the emotional part of it.
Right.
I dealt with everything else then. And so,
and that was your way. So it's not
that's
necessarily
important.
Like, yeah, you worked a lot, and
I took great trips because of it.
It helped.
Yeah, you did.
You were doing positive things.
Yeah.
And I think that even if maybe, you know, like we were talking about, like, how do you can't just stop time and say, well, I'm going to deal with this when you have 2 kids and the world is going on.
The world is still going, no matter how you deal with it. And I would agree with that.
So people can judge. Everybody can judge. But in the end, like, you have to do what you need to do. So that's how I feel like, you know, you could get mad at yourself about it, but you can't go back. So I think that at least you can say, well, I might not have dealt with it the way I would have wanted to, but at least my business as a result was better. Like, you know.
No, I agree. We like nonchalantly talk about all of this. So,
well, and obviously I had a very different outcome. Mm-hmm. So for us, I didn't find out that I was pregnant until I was 11 and a half weeks along. And I only found out because I had a UTI that they thought turned into a kidney infection. I ended up having an allergic reaction to a medication, which caused my numbers to tank. I almost ended up in the hospital. This was all right around Good Friday, so it wasn't a very good Easter that year.
Wasn't a good Friday.
No, it wasn't a good Friday at all. I ended up in the ER that night, and it was frustrating because, you know, we weren't trying to have another child. I already had 2 children, and financially, it came at a time where my husband had been unemployed and was going to be unemployed for, I didn't know how long. And so, like, there was all of this stress, and then you couple in that my boys are 17 and a half months apart. So I was still nursing a baby, very much a baby, and, like, I started losing weight, like, lots and lots of weight. I lost 22 pounds. And so to sit in the doctor's office and have a conversation about your numbers aren't dropping fast enough, and we're concerned that, you know, this could get serious. And then you have to have the conversation about what does this look like and what's the choice I'm going to make, because I have 2 babies at home.
And you need to be there for
And I
them.
need to be there for those babies. And so it's something I was talking about with my husband earlier. And it's not an easy decision because I told the doctor, like, after discussing with him, that was probably the route we would take if things didn't change. So, then you're coming to terms with, this is the choice I'm making, and accepting that choice. And then out of nowhere, like, the numbers slowly start to creep up. And so it's so you start grieving a loss, and then it turns into, like, okay, everything's going to be okay. And then you're like, I don't even know how to process what just happened, or how am I going to deal with babies that are 17 and a half months apart, like, all of these things.
Yeah.
And so then I felt guilty because I had started to accept the fact that there wasn't going to be a baby.
Yeah.
And so I went through this 2-week process where, like, I couldn't even talk to my husband. I was so angry. I was so frustrated. So, like, I don't even know what the word is, but, like, there were so many different emotions. And I didn't really tell anyone because how do you tell someone
You
that's
didn't really
going
know.
on? Like,
You
I
didn't
don't know
really even
what the
what's
heck
gonna
is
happen.
going on. I don't know if I'm going to end up in the hospital. I don't know. Like, I got reamed out by a doctor that did a CAT scan on me because I didn't know I was pregnant. I'm sorry. I had periods for 3 months. I had no reason to think
Yeah.
I was pregnant. And, like,
And yelling at you, what good is that going to do? And especially in that state of mind.
No,
sometimes
like-
people need to, like, just check themselves. Like
it was one
I
of
like
those,
that. Doctors, check yourself.
Well, I got
Hashtag.
I got so angry because, like, there's no way in heck I would have agreed to this test if I had for 1 second thought I was pregnant.
But they made you feel that way.
yes, but that is how they made me feel like garbage.
And I don't,
And it was really
hashtag I'm not sticking up for doctors, but I think that, we don't realize that this does happen in 1 in 4 women. Doctors are going through this every day. So they're not sympathetic. They're
No.
not, I'm not saying all doctors, but
This particular one.
they're
wasn't.
not as sympathetic. They're not as
My-
connected because it's an everyday thing
Yeah.
to them. But it's not an everyday thing to women.
Well, or they have other patients. Like, my doctor had to go to a delivery once, like, during my appointment. And it was kind of like, I just kind of felt like, well, I don't matter. Because,
Right.
because mine's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think that she meant that, but that's how I felt. Like, oh, you need to go to your delivery, but I'm
And I think the difference
not a
is,
priority
like,
because
Yeah.
that was just some random doctor. And the doctor I have that's my primary care physician, she's amazing. I can't say enough good things about her. She's gotten me through every, like, good and bad thing that's happened, like, with my health. And so, like, she's really what I think got me through all of that, because I knew I didn't want to go back to the practice I had been with previously for numerous reasons. The final straw being when the receptionist on the phone asked me if I was the woman calling to have an abortion. I felt like that really crossed a line, and it was extremely hurtful. And I know how that office was set up, so every single woman that was waiting in that waiting room heard that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the thing that really, really got me through dealing with everything, and, like, there's still some things that I've dealt with more recently in terms of all of this, was that ER visit is what brought me to the doctor that delivered my son, that didn't make me have a 3rd C-section. Like, I got to have a VBAC,
which is great.
which is huge.
Yeah.
He was the one that talked me through all of the what ifs.
Mhm.
Like, here's how we're going to handle this if something goes wrong. Like, because it wasn't a typical pregnancy for me. And the reason when we had our 2nd child, I didn't want to have more children was because I do struggle tremendously when I'm pregnant. It's not easy. With the diabetes, since mine is not controlled by insulin, it's all diet. And so, like, the minute I stray from that diet, bad things happen.
Yeah.
And so, like, I love Reese. I love him dearly, but, like, originally he wasn't part of the plan.
Yeah.
And so for a long time I felt guilty because I kind of went through a phase where I didn't know that I wanted a 3rd kid, And I think that's okay. Like, I love him. I wouldn't change anything, but if things had continued to go down the path they were going down, I would have chosen the route that you did. And I think where I get angry is when people say that you have no emotions if you choose something like that. I've had that said before. I've heard people say that, like, people do that because they're heartless. And I'm like, how can you judge someone
when you don't know their whole story?
when you don't know their whole story?
Well, and I think that that's just crazy. And it's hard not to get emotional when it's you. Like, when I found out after I had my miscarriage, and I went back to the doctor, and my doctor flat out told me, very nonchalantly, well, you couldn't get that second medication because the pharmacist will not prescribe it because it's
their choice.
Because it was a medication that also terminates pregnancies.
Okay.
So I didn't even have a choice. So I was prescribed this medicine by my doctor, who told me it would make my medication-induced miscarriage a better experience. And then I found out after the nurse didn't tell me what was really going on. And I mean, I think that she knew it wasn't because it was a shortage of medication. I think that she knew.
Basically, they lied to you.
They lied to take that choice away, and I think that just I think that happens more often than we want to admit.
But why? But okay. So
and why should someone else make that decision for you?
And why is it okay for me to take one medication because it's also for ulcers, but because the other medication that I would have been given is also used to terminate pregnancies. Therefore, I could not have it, or no one else could have it, and that's why I did my blog post. I waited like 5 months, but partially because I was furious just about that.
I remember talking about that with you,
and I was like, well, how do
I wanted to go to the pharmacy and punch the pharmacist like in the face because like, how is that fair? Like, how is that fair for you to say, no, you don't deserve this medication because I don't want to prescribe it for you because it like violates something for me? Like,
because I'm going to make the choice for you. Screw you. And it was like, oh, and then, but just the way it was all communicated to me, I just felt like, at least if my doctor would have said, like, hold up, this is what's going on, I at least would have felt like I deserve that. And I didn't deserve to have my follow-up appointment be like, oh, and by the way, this is what really happened.
Yeah, no, I agree. So Katie had commented, you don't know everybody's story 100%, and I do. I agree with that completely as to each woman's body is different. Each pregnancy is different. Everything is different, and it can change at any moment.
And you have no control.
And you have no control over it. And I think that is something very important to like keep in mind. And I can say, I actually had an amazing doctor for my DNC, and I can tell you that I will be forever grateful for that woman. Typically when she actually was a client of mine who stepped back into the practice. She was a director of the practice who we don't really like anybody in the practice anymore, but this woman was the director of the practice,
which sometimes makes
she had stepped back in and did my DNC for me. I had watched her dogs, and so she stepped back in. She owed me. I watched her dogs. She's not watching right now, but she's absolutely the most amazing woman. Typically when they do a DNC, they take that baby right away. They don't want it. And I got a lot of feedback with this. Everybody I told me this was the worst idea I could ever did, but it was exactly what I needed. I held that baby for an hour and a half. I named that baby. She looked in the books and helped me look up names that meant what I needed it to mean and all of that. So
to me, that just says she's a good human being.
Yeah, and I think that that's important to say that not all doctors are heartless. I don't even say heartless. I want to say sometimes it's so routine that they can't connect sometimes. I don't want to say they're heartless by any means because I don't think any baby doctor is heartless.
No, they're just sometimes their focus.
I think it's anytime you're exposed to something so many times that you sometimes just build up like
an immune to it. And I would agree with that. So my actual trait, I'm a surgical vet tech, and I can't see a human bleed I will pass out in 5 seconds. Like, it does not. If you start, my mom knows if she's watching. My kids bleed, I call her on the phone. She's bleeding. You need to come here. Like, both kids have got stitches. Mom did it. I can't handle it. Pass out in a second. But a dog can do about anything, and I can stomach it.
Through my husband's surgeries.
No, what now? I can't. Well, when my husband got injured, when his head was like bleeding, I was like, can't do this. Like, do you need a sandwich? Do you need something? Because I can't be in this room.
I'll bring you some tea, honey.
So I do think that you do get immune to it, and I feel like, I don't want to be on here badgering.
No, and I don't think that like the doctors I saw were bad at what their practice was. I just think that particular day the bedside manner could have been better.
And that can be a thing too. Most people. I remember even my husband at the time saying, "Why do you want to know if it's a girl or a boy? That's only going to hurt more."
I remember you telling me.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things between us. I don't want to know. He did not want to know if it was a boy or girl. He did not want me to name it because he thought you're just going to get more attached. But me, the type of person I was, I needed that closure. I needed that attachment. I needed, we called him Nathaniel, which means gift from God. And his middle name was Eli, which means strong fighter.
And I have a little boy with a middle name.
Yeah. So, I needed to name him. That was part of my closure. And that goes back to, I couldn't get a reason. I couldn't get a definite reason why I couldn't take him home, but I could give him an identity.
Right. And if it works for you, and I think that's the thing. Other people can judge you and, Rachel Hollis, sorry, she's amazing.
There's been a couple quotes that I have thought were very apropos to what we're discussing right now.
Other people's opinions of you
are none of your business.
Yes. And people are really going to judge you, but it's about them and it's not about you. And if it helps you, and I
needed him to have an identity. I needed him to have a name. I needed him to be a person and not a thing. And you'll notice our sign at the beginning said 1 in 4, but always a mom. And I was a mom to 2 babies before Nathaniel. But some people struggle with infertility or struggle to have a baby at all. And then they have that miscarriage and then they're not moms. No,
but they are.
They're still moms. You carried a live child inside of you. Whether you got to take that thing home or not, you're still a mom. And I think that that's so important to drill into anyone who's willing to listen right now, that just because you didn't bring it home does not make you less of a mother.
Right. And I think the whole sensitivity thing, sometimes you're going to say things that are going to upset people regardless of what you say. But I do think
even if it's not your intention.
But I do think it's important, not to ask people at work or at places oh, are you going to have kids? Because number one, everyone doesn't want kids. And number 2, you don't know their story.
And it's not nice when you've gained weight and somebody asks you if you're pregnant again either.
I also learned from a friend that has a lot of kids to not ask when they're having another one. I learned that the wrong way.
Yeah.
So those are personal. I think that I want to kind of go in on that too, because I think that maybe is the root why women don't, you hear this whole thing, your first trimester, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. So then,
and we're all told it's
it's an unwritten code of a woman.
And I think that also stems from the majority of miscarriages.
Yeah, it's a fear
happen during that period of time.
It's a fear so you're told at the beginning of your first trimester, do not tell a single soul till you reach that second trimester, so you're out of the risk, because you don't want to have to then tell them you lost the child. So you have that.
But then you suffer silently because you told nobody that you were pregnant, and
then they don't know.
And then there's nobody a stigma, though, that if you don't tell anybody, then there's nothing wrong with you because nobody knows. But it's that's
but then you're all by yourself. How do you cope with that all on your own? And I don't think that it's something you should deal with on your own.
And you should, and that's where I'm trying to get at is I think that is where the start of you don't talk about miscarriages. You don't talk about the privacy of pregnancy. You don't talk about pain. You don't talk about all of this.
And then you go into having a baby and you're terrified because nobody talked about it.
But then that's the issue. When you don't talk about it, nobody's talking about it. And then you realize that how many people have went through the same thing you are? So why are we not talking about it? Why is it so personal to not discuss the pain of it?
I think some of that probably relates to how you grow up, because like if you grew up in a house that generally doesn't speak openly about like relationships and sex and things like that, why would you be open about something like
It's
that?
just another layer of taboo to add.
Exactly. No, I would agree. I would completely agree with that.
And I think like when I did my blog post, again, my initial reason for doing the blog post was I was so angry about the whole medication thing, and I wanted people to be aware of it because I thought, well, if I don't share it, how are people going to know? Because I didn't know. So that was part of the reason. But then the responses I got from people, whether it be people that I mean, I've moved, I told you a lot. So I know
people you don't know.
Yeah, I know people in different places, and I feel like people reached out to me in a way where I just felt like, wow, I wouldn't have known this, and I'm glad that these people told me, but it was a way for them to kind of get it off their shoulders. And I think that when you hold in things, like you were saying when you were working and your work was going well, but when you are holding on to something that you need to let go, it's not going to go away unless you share it in a way where,
yeah.
I just want to say, Anna, I love you and I miss you, and I totally agree with what you just said.
Awesome. Anna basically just said, thank you for their comment. I never brought mine home, but it didn't mean it wasn't my child. My husband's son is 6.5 and told me last Mother's Day that he is happy I'm his stepmom and that babies in heaven love me too. It was precious. Bless you all for being honest. So I think that is definitely... our producer's crying.
We made Scott cry.
So with that, like I want to lead way in. You have a brand, you have a blog, not just the podcast. And I would love to talk, because I think that this kind of leads into this. What is your brand? What do you talk about and what's your goal?
So my brand is Not a Morning Mom, and I created it back in 2015. I was living in Omaha at the time, and I wanted to be a perfect parent. And I thought,
there are no perfect parents.
Well, I know, but I was driving myself crazy.
Yeah.
When I would be nursing my youngest son in the middle of the night, I would be flipping parenting articles into this Flipboard magazine I created, and I had.
I think that's a trend there.
Man, yes. But I just
I did not. My kids didn't nurse very well, so I was doing nothing else.
But so I felt like I understand this now. Like just reading parenting articles and acquiring knowledge isn't the end goal, and it shouldn't be. But I just wanted to just absorb as much information as I could. And in the process, I was overwhelming myself and stressing myself out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I realized I needed to have my own voice. My parenting magazine on Flipboard was getting exposure. Flip.edu, which is like a community of magazines in the educational realm, reached out to me and they were like, "Do you want to be a featured magazine in our community?" And I was like, "Yes." But then this voice inside my head said, "I can't have a featured magazine in this community if I'm not posting my own content." So that was my push to create Not a Morning Mom, because I was like, I have to have my own point of view and I have to be expressing it. So then I started Not a Morning Mom so I could flip my own blog posts into my magazine.
Which makes sense.
So, but really the point of my brand is I want people to like understand I am not perfect. I'm far from it. And that when you look at people on social media and you see what you think are perfect families, or when you see, oh, someone's expecting, and like I got angry when I had my miscarriage and I was seeing this on Facebook and I had to like not look at it. And it wasn't about anybody else. It was about me. But I really want people to be empowered that they have strengths and that they can better themselves and not beat themselves up and not be ashamed and not feel like they're the only ones going through things. Right. And
I think
none of us
real about being real about what motherhood looks like, I think is really what you do best.
Yeah.
And genuine.
I think that is so very important. That's kind of why like I invited you on, is because yes, you have the experience of the miscarriage and stuff, but your blog just in general of like You're not a perfect mom. None of us are perfect moms. How we handle our children on a day-to-day basis, we're not perfect. There are some days I still end and I'm like, I'm just glad you're alive. I didn't accomplish anything today, but you're alive. And
You were fed, you were clothed. Yeah. It's a good day.
You're not going to be perfect in miscarriages. You're not going to be perfect in how you process them. It's not maybe going to be the perfect dream, and that's okay. That is absolutely okay.
And you have to surround yourself with other people. Like when I found Mom's Club, it was before I moved here, so this is my second Mom's Club. I will say it's my favorite.
I do need to plug real quick. So we keep talking about the Copley Farallon Moms Club. We are all 3 members of it. If you're local, look up Copley Farallon Moms Club. We'd love to have you as part of our group. But also, there's a Moms Club across the entire United States. So you just look up.
You can go on the website and check it out, and they'll tell you.
So we keep plugging that. We will also plug her blog because I think that it's important. But shout out to Moms Clubs.
And really, really, truly, like, I know people who've moved to different states, similar situation to me where they don't know anyone. And I know people who could use Moms Club just because, like,
I was one of those people.
Yeah. And like, even if you're not, like, I think the key thing is it doesn't matter, like, yes, I didn't know anybody, like, when I moved here, but that's not a reason to join a Moms Club in and of itself.
But it meant I met you because there's no other reason our paths would cross based on how our life goes normally.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think that community, like, when you do think your dream isn't going to happen, like, that might be in your head, but that's your reality. And having that community of people around you to support you and help get you off of that, like, tunnel vision, so to speak, of, like,
I definitely have tunnel vision.
This is my dream, and all of a sudden you have this huge roadblock. You need people like Moms Club people or just
somebody to push you when you need it.
Yeah, so definitely look it up. So we're going to wrap up. We've had a lot of discussion. Please, if you're just joining us, rewatch this. Feel free, if you do not want to comment, send I or Amy. Amy is currently in Amish country. We miss her greatly. But
we know she tuned in.
Yes, she's on. She's watching. Please feel free to message us personally or put a message on Civil Solidarity because we would love to talk about your story. We'd love to hear your story, and I think that that's very important. So anything else you'd like to say before I close real quick?
No, I think that really covers it.
So, I can say that none of us would ever wish a miscarriage on anyone, and but it happens. And even though nobody's talking about it, like, we need to be talking about it. We need to let everyone know that it's happening and it's not your fault. And more people around you are going through this than you may think. So we hope that sharing our experiences brings some level of comfort. It hasn't been easy. I think that all of us have struggled a little bit this week processing and going through this, but
how to talk about it.
Yeah, how to talk about it, what to say, and all of that. So we thank you for joining us. We look forward to talking more about this. There's going to be some follow-up shows. Please tune in for. So thank you guys for being here.
Have a great evening.
Thanks for listening. Have a great evening, everyone, and good night.
Bye.
Thank you.